Singapore doesn't have a huge art scene compared to some other countries, but we do have a really talented pool of artists across many disciplines. In fact, you might have come across some of their works in public spaces or even on social media and didn't blink an eye. I myself am guilty of this. You see a piece of art, you acknowledge it, but you don't really think twice about it. You just glance through and pass right by it. Today we're gonna dive straight into the heart of an artist and find out what it takes to make art here in this country. I'm going to be meeting 3 Singaporean artists in their own right to find out more about their craft. Seashell is a sculptor who has found a strong following on social media for her miniature artworks that are a blend of creepy and cute. Why creepy and cute?
I have always been more attracted to storytelling and characters that are not entirely good or evil. There is always this conflict within people, and I think that all of us have these two sides. My art is kind of trying to find that balance, treading between what some people find really beautiful and some find really grotesque.
How did it even start?
It was Chinese New Year period, and then there were these pistachio shells. I just thought, what if I replaced the seed with a head? I thought it was really funny, so I put it on social media, and then all my friends were like, yeah, you should make a walnut baby. All this other, a lot of different suggestions came in. I think that was sort of the turning point, because it was when I started to realize, hey, I like taking things from the everyday and try to create something special and unique, and I think that was sort of how it started style-wise. A lot of people that will come to me curious about buying them, but then 9 out of 10 are actually not serious. They're just asking for a price and then they expect it to be $50 and it is not. Currently, my works are sold at around 2.5 to 3.5 in galleries.
So this is your workstation. So to start everything, it would be, of course, with conceptualization. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you get to the other steps?
If you look at the body of works that I have, they usually happen in series. So it's the whole dim sum series or the whole sweet tooth series. Then I will do research. Even for my dim sum series, I went to Din Tai Fung a few times. I really just ate dim sum.
Perfect excuse, right?
Yeah. So usually that process itself takes a while, because I will have something in mind, I'll brew on it for a long time before actually executing the work. So usually I start with polymer clay, which is a mix of plastic and normal clay. I think because it has a bit of plastic in it, so it gives a very nice matte sheen, which is kind of nice when I'm trying to make things that have a fleshy texture, because it's not overly glossy and doesn't look like it's a Halloween prop. What you see here with all these different colors, I didn't buy them like this. So what I do is I usually mix in my own colors. I usually use this soft pastels. The next step is I will take the clay and use these tools to work in the features.
I see a couple of makeup sets over here, but I'm assuming we're using that to kind of paint the face. Just like how you would paint a
my
normal human, perfectly sized.
Yeah. It was an accidental discovery, because I actually started out not having any of these fancy pastels. So I actually just thought maybe I'll use my own blush to put on the color. But then it was only after I tried it and I realized that it gives a more lifelike and a more glowy appearance. Once colors are applied, I have to put them in the oven for it to harden.
Wait, when you talk about baking, are we talking about using a different kind of equipment to bake? Or am I thinking it's the same method as I would if I'm cooking something?
It's the exact same oven. So I know that it's not best practice. It's not something that I should encourage everyone to do. But then right now, I share that particular oven with my family. So what I usually do after baking is that I always have to make sure that I air it properly, that I clean it all down, to make sure that nothing toxic is left behind.
Does your mom ever open the oven,
at
certain points and she goes ah!
Yeah, I usually have to warn her before.
Mom, I'm baking brains.
Don't get a shock, okay? I'm gonna bake my babies at night. And she'll be oh, okay, sure.
I'm here at the studio of Kumari Nahapan. Even if you've never heard of her, you've most definitely seen her works across spaces like Iron Orchard, One Fair, and Changi Airport. So today, we're gonna find out what goes into making art with Kumari, and Kumari mostly does these big bronze sculptures. One of your more famous artworks is the Nutmeg. How long did it take to construct it start to finish?
Took me about 18 months. I got some nutmegs from Penang. I did as many photographs as I can of it, then started opening them up and eventually came up with one that I actually felt it spoke to me. Initially, I started off with sketches. After the sketches and everything, I worked on a model. Once the small model has been cast, I would go on to making an enlargement of this. I will have to cut it up into parts to cast parts of it and then join them all together to come up with a large work. The nutmeg was actually cast in 53 parts. Unfortunately, we do not have a foundry in Singapore, so the casting is done in Thailand.
How do you connect the dots then after everything's been completed?
They are welded together. Once they are welded together, because you could see the joints, then we will do a bit of tacking and touch up of the pieces. It will then, we call it another stage that's called chasing. And once chasing is all finished, you don't see any joints in them. That's when we introduce the color. There is a process called patination. We don't paint them. We use a torch and we use acids. So we actually light a torch and heat the metal. The metal gets very excited. It starts eating the acids. On one hand, you use a torch. On the other hand, you use the acid with the pigment and you actually go on like sponging it a bit or touching up.
How long does it approximately take you to ship it all the way back, and how heavy does it weigh?
The weight is about 2.3 tons, and because the nutmeg could never fit into a container, because the container can only take something up to 2.2 meters high, this was way beyond. So it had to actually travel on open deck where it's exposed to the elements. So when it arrives, you actually have to touch up everything here. So it took about 10 days. To get to ION, we actually had to request for permission from LTA because we had to block one lane when it arrived to use a crane to take it across to the site.
There's so much that goes into the creation of an art piece. How do you determine its price?
With the casting and with the logistics and with the artist fee, it works anything around 280 to 300,000 for a public artwork.
How do you feel, when you see your artworks in public spaces and people are taking photos of it?
Actually, it makes me really happy that it engages with people. Hopefully, it brings a smile to their face.
Zul is an artist known for integrating sounds into his art pieces. One of his most famous artworks is Sonic Pathway, which can be found at the Maple Tree Business Park. Sound art is not really a common type of art form, so I'm very interested to have my questions answered.
Instead of looking at art, you just listen to art. Up till now, I think it's just so difficult to really explain to people, okay, what's this art form is about? Because either you're a musician or sound engineer or you do concert. Sometimes I can feel quite lonely because not many people are doing it in Singapore.
So why sound?
I don't talk too much. I like to listen. For me, every sound is very interesting. All these have its own rhythm and also its own melody.
I'm thinking about conceptualization for you. What inspires you to really start?
I always have a recorder with me. I just let it record. So whenever I take a public transport or I go to parks, these are just like my sound sketches. These are some of the small devices that I do for my recording. This one is actually a binaural microphone. So basically I put on my ear and I record whatever I'm hearing. So people are not intimidated by your devices, right? Because they thought that you're just
Listening to
It's like
music.
yeah. For me, I come from a sculpture background, so I like to DIY things. So I created this like a parabolic microphone. There's a microphone here attached to a recorder. Basically, it's like for far distance recording. So you can actually pick up from, let's say, 200 meters.
This is, I'm assuming it's where you create something from all the pieces that you've brought back.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like all the samples that I've been recording, so I just put it into this program. It's like an editing software.
It's almost like you're creating music, but in a very, very different way.
Yeah, because the thing is like, no, I'm not musically trained, but I guess if you listen carefully to all these natural sounds or everyday sound, there's a certain pattern or like rhythm or melody to it. Basically, you create a composition out of it, like a soundscape.
Once the soundtrack is completed, what is usually the next step for you?
The next step will be fabrication, building the actual piece, like let's say for copper pipes, assembling it, getting all the materials and just joining it. So yeah, it's basically building to my specification what I want. When the fabrication is done, we'll install all these like the speakers, then after that install it at the actual space. Then I will design how's the sound going to be, the loudness or the softness of the sound, and also at which point the sound is coming from.
We've come to the end of today's episode, and honestly, I have found a new sense of appreciation and respect for our local artists. So the next time you pass by their works in public or on social media, you'll know what it took to get there. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to get notified every time a new episode is out. I'll see you in the next one!